Welcome to the Sprocket Pod, your podcast for helpful HubSpot content. I'm Cameron Collins, and alongside my co-host Mark Lerner, we sit down each week with experts on the HubSpot CRM to break down cool builds and unique apps that will make your instance better. Whether you're a new admin or you're a business owner looking to get the most out of HubSpot, our conversations are going to provide you with unique insights that you can apply. Don't forget, we host the Sprocket Pod live on LinkedIn every week, and you can catch all of our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. Let's dive into today's episode and get you working smarter with HubSpot. Yeah, welcome indeed to the Sprocket Pod. Mark, always a pleasure when we get to do these every single week and break down topics relevant for the community.
Well, glad to be here. Glad I'm back in my home base. Last week I had some technical issues, but we shouldn't have any of those this week, knock on fake wood.
No, and this is a very exciting week where we get to break down a really big topic near and dear to all of our hearts. We're going to be talking about community, and today we've got our guest, Carolan, on. Chris, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. It's been way too long, fellas.
I know. We had you on for one of our very early episodes, and I mean, that was back in the days of Zoom, and look how far we've come.
I know. Early adopter. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of early adopters and founders, as we see with your title, we're going to be talking not just about community-led growth, but also one of the big drivers of community growth in the HubSpot ecosystem and what is really a unique pocket of opportunity for the HubSpot admin. So I don't want to give too much away, but Chris, go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about Profoundly.
Oh, three weeks old now. January 23rd, we launched. It is a platform that is meant to make it easier for people that need help with HubSpot to find people that can help them. It's that straightforward. It's a little bit marketplace, it's a little bit community, it's a little bit online learning in the very near future.
Was this based on like solving a pain point that you had yourself?
Oh yeah. At the heart of it, you see like all these cool people, smart people, individual consultants, admins. I became very familiar with this in Sprocketeer. People answering questions every day there on LinkedIn. Yet knowing that there's this difficulty to be seen and be found, for your HubSpot expertise is really at the heart of like, how can we bring that together, make it a little less hard on the individual, on both sides of that help request, and help people, grow and be successful with HubSpot at the same time. So yeah, that's at the heart of it. I mean, like my pain point, if I could continue, last year or in 23, Salim and I got together, said, hey, let's kind of done with this in-house game. Let's see what we can do with our own agency. And, we did some fun stuff, but it was challenging to kind of figure it out. Also, the partner program, and it's definitely, I'll just say it can be hard to get started if you don't have a lot of good connections and a really, well thought out like operational plan to scale quickly in the partner program. And ended up in June, it's just me at that point. Salim had found another opportunity with an elite partner, which was really a good outcome for both of us. We were just trying to make something new. So super happy for him and the journey he's on. He's at Unlimited Solutions now. But I was there, I like just talking to people, helping people with HubSpot, individual coach, individual running an agency. And I'm like, I don't think this program is necessarily built for me right now. So I started talking to some other individual consultants and got a group together inside of Sprocketeer, and just trying to figure out like how can we how can we help the group of HubSpot customers that doesn't necessarily need to buy more HubSpot, and they don't need to have anybody else build stuff for them, which are the two primary ways you tier up, like in the partner program. But they still need a lot of help with HubSpot, like getting the data model right, understanding what's new and what's relevant for them, like all the product updates. Nobody's really incentivized to focus on helping that group.
Hmm.
Yet we know there's a lot out there, and there's more every day as the HubSpot user base explodes. So that's really where it started, and you just again this beautiful community where it's not as hard as in most other places to make the right connections at the right times, and here we are, uh, in February of 2025, just having launched, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, communities and marketplaces also. It's like it's two-sided, right? So you have that like chicken and egg problem. Um, how did you approach that?
I think still approaching it, probably. It's easier to start with the marketplace because it's very tangible. It's very black and white and on both sides in terms of you post your job as a user who needs help, and pros see it and they can propose their solutions to it, and then somebody picks one, and then you're off to the races. Uh, but it's important for us, like knowing what else is other platforms that are already doing that, like Fiverr and Upwork, right? We've heard about those experiences, uh, and not necessarily wanting to, reproduce that. Um, so that's where the community side of it and really opening the door for this kind of on ramp uh, of, let's say, expert help, if you will, because one of the primary challenges for everybody is that if everybody's having trouble keeping up with the platform, the partners themselves, the HubSpot team themselves, and like no shade on anybody because this is just a ridiculous pace that a software company can move forward with updates. But it's very hard to take everybody at face value for what you actually know about HubSpot. Somebody that has a significant Salesforce background and has just been in the ecosystem for 6 months is super great at RevOps, might actually be the expert you need versus somebody who's been in the ecosystem for 10 years and has made a healthy business just focusing on helping people with Marketing Hub, right? There's audiences for both of those people, but it can be hard as a HubSpot customer to really understand. And without the community, without the content, it sucks to have to engage somebody in a project first to be able to understand their expertise. And those are the stories that we hear about. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't.
I think it's also a great solution because it allows people who have or develop a level of familiarity with the ecosystem to tap into the power players that they've maybe always wanted to work with. So, I mean, I've seen some of the vetted pros who are up on Profoundly site and are available to work with projects. And I mean, they're people that are very active in Sprocketeer and people that I'm very friendly with. And for any company that is not looking to bring on an agency and maybe isn't in a place where they want to hire somebody, being able to hire not just someone who's a personality in the space, but someone who is vocal and active and has proven that they know their stuff, Profoundly is the way to tap into that because it lets you go and find those pros and work with them. And I
Y-
think that's really special.
Yeah, I do too. I'm glad that's the vibe. We've gotten a lot of feedback to suggest that, right? And And we're still in the process of launching. We're excited for the March 6th event, where I think we'll really seal the deal of that we do mean to be something different that hasn't existed before, but also doesn't really displace a lot of what is already here. Because the case I was trying to make back in June of last year is that all these onboarding issues, all these adoption issues, all these people wondering how they can get more out of HubSpot, you know, the fast product updates and the evolution into customer platform is certainly part of it, but also the way it's been delivered, as a let's get the quick wins, right? Let's sell it as a point solution because it's easier to sell that way. But then we're delivering a customer platform no matter what. And then as soon as they see invoices or subscriptions or whatever they're going to see in the platform, they're like, oh, why didn't I hear about that? That could be really good for us. What I noticed is that there's like the strategic layer missing in terms of when everybody's incentivized by point systems and KPIs. And again, like these are the systems that are built, and this is how you become successful. Whether you're inside of HubSpot or outside, you got KPIs to hit. Like, I totally get it. And you don't, if you got KPIs to hit and you have trouble keeping up, like all you can do is kind of focus on the functional success of HubSpot. Let's get it in your hands. Let's make sure it works. You said you want to send out some emails. We'll make sure that works. Right. And that's where I know from the outside as a partner, it often came up like we could see, the enablement, resources and teams like being reduced a little bit. And just the math didn't work. And I know that as much as we would love to depend on HubSpot themselves to enable everybody outside, and this I drew from my days in manufacturing, like HubSpot, in my opinion, has a very specific role in terms of helping people understand their product. And that is stuff like how to invoice, how to create an object. All of Kyle Jepson's videos, right, is very straight to the point. This is how it works. Like all the rest of us, everybody in the outside, this is how it works for you, like for your business, for this application, for this industry, right? And that was a layer that we need to step up. And the cool thing is the community does step up in a lot of ways to support that enablement. But it's hard work, being alive on LinkedIn every day, also having client work, also somehow keeping up with product updates, also being active, in Sprocketeer in the community. So as I was, the one thing about Sprocketeer, which is amazing, and like most of this inspiration comes from just showing up in that community every day and talking to people, the coffee chats, like never missing a week of meeting somebody new and understanding how do you use HubSpot? Like, because there's no manual I can go look at and know that you're going to hit anything in that manual, right? Like every business is different. And it was just so eye opening in terms of like, man, a lot of different use cases, a lot of ways to use HubSpot. How can we help? And in those conversations, it was a lot of, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information out there, but also I can't find any information about Commerce Hub. The Content Hub just came out. I can't find anything about that. What is Operations Hub? Like that, what is that? Oh, it's this throw in like that I got with the rest. So it's like, how do you, I guess I love tackling unsolvable challenges because it's tough, right? Like Uh, if everybody's overwhelmed with content, like how do you help them and how do we educate into those gaps? It's been something on my mind for the last year or so.
And we're going to be dropping a link to the March 6th event. So I want to spend a moment talking about that, because if our listeners take away one thing from the live stream today, it's the fact that Profoundly is not just a marketplace for companies to hire HubSpot admin. It is an extension of the Sprocketeer community. And Chris, you've talked about moving into a world where we have course content and some other, I think, big picture initiatives that right now aren't available on the website. But what is the March 6th event, and what's making that special in the lead up to Profoundly really launching?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's an event for HubSpot professionals. Like I tell you, everybody knows it's very hard to find two words to describe anybody that is in the HubSpot ecosystem right now, because the word HubSpot happens to be so ambiguous. Um, but really, it's for individuals with expertise in HubSpot, whether it's admins or it's consultants. The people that have been showing up really in the community, day in and day out for years, um, and also months in some cases. Uh, it's an event for them. Like it's an event to, learn from your peers, but also, put your expertise, on display in a lot of cases. Like those, well, they are personalities, like you mentioned, those same personalities who've been showing up on LinkedIn. A lot of them from the Let's Build series, but also, people like George B. Thomas, who's been doing it since, 2012, I think, really highlighting, um, their point of view and just the making it easier to share, like share knowledge, right? Um, and just like it says here, and this is why I think it's like I can understand where people, it sounds too good to be true in a lot of ways that all of a sudden this strategic gap, this unsolvable problem can be solved. But the scale that we're trying to accomplish and that we're able to accomplish because there are so many, uh, you know, experts involved, um, is a big part of why we believe we can solve the problem. Um, but the event is it's very important to us to deliver on the concept of no fluff, no pitches, right? It's straight knowledge coming from all these individual experts, and we're really excited. And it is like I think that'll be the like sealing the deal in terms of okay, this group, this community, this new resource is here to educate, first and foremost, and help everybody grow.
I think it really speaks into something that I've become very vocal about, but I think we all know to be true, which is that community is baked into the ethos of how the HubSpot ecosystem operates. Because if you look at Sprocketeer, if you look at events like this, if you look at how inbound is run, it really is about helping to lift one another up and educating one another. And as a byproduct, not only do we grow in our skill sets, but we all grow in our careers, and the tide really does rise. And this event, I know as of where we're recording today, we have over 250 registrations for people who are attending. But it's really exciting to see the community come together purely for the purpose of helping one another to grow, to educate, and to empower. And I think that's special to see.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very excited. Um, and a lot of what I learned last year in doing like trying to prioritize, this knowledge gap that I've been talking about is like to reach the scale, um, we have to figure out a way to share knowledge at a pace, that attempts to match, the speed of the product. And so back in June of last year, I simply asked, like, hey, if you could show up, once a week on LinkedIn, just show up and share your expertise for like 30 minutes, who would do it? And I had an initial five, volunteers. Um, and uh, and it kind of showed like almost everybody was like, okay, we're either gonna prep, and then of course nobody has time to prep, so we just run it, um, or okay, we won't prep, and we'll just talk about the topic, and we'll see how it goes. Almost everybody, uh, after the first episode, was like, "Oh, that was easy. I guess we didn't have to prep. Like that worked." And it was always my goal, say, "Okay, let's build blank," with Mark Lerner. And the blank has to be something you're passionate about. And hopefully it has to do with HubSpot too, but not always. Right. Sometimes it can just be like, reporting or attribution as a concept, right? Not necessarily in HubSpot. And it turns out if you know your stuff and you're passionate about the topic, it creates valuable content. Uh, and when you don't script it purposely, it forces authentic content. So we end up with some deep conversations, which I get not for everybody. Not everybody has the time, but the feedback that I got, across the board from people inside of, HubSpot that were just starting there, and saw this as a resource, interns, students, new AEs, at partner companies, just all over the board. And for me, that was accomplishing the goal that I set out to say, like, hey, everybody's in this knowledge gap. I'm not going to take time to try and like pinpoint and target, and we just got to start sharing. Like, and through that, we grew a lot of relationships that led to a lot of the pros that you'll find, on Profoundly, but also who are now like, being honest, super comfortable at showing up at events like this and sharing knowledge. And some of them are starting, their own shows, and the scalability of the knowledge share really in an event like this, uh, is like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to share knowledge, bring people in, um, you know, make it, create a place so that people can gather and say, "Hey, I'm not up to speed," like, and that's okay. Like, we all have stuff to learn. Hitting all these 8 tracks, it's gonna be fun. And this is like, I guess this is why I like live, unscripted events, because I can just go wherever. So you have to rein me back in if I miss the point of the question.
I think that, to your point, removing scripting does create authenticity. Certainly, there's time and place for scripted content or having bullet points. We can see again if you're watching the video versus listening in podcast format, for the March 6th kickoff event coming up. I mean, it is killer sessions with just amazing experts. I mean, we have Josh Oakes, Danielle Urban, Stuart Balcom, Cody Lopez, like so many people who, to your point, Chris, up to this point were really just people who were very active in the Sprocketeer community and really hadn't been asking anything of anyone. Um, Maybe to some regard, they've been freelancing and doing, say, their own thing for a period of time. But, when it comes to being in Sprocketeer, selflessly, they're in there every day, week over week, month over month, adding value, giving content, and just making themselves known. And so when we look at experts like this, I think that the authenticity comes just from showing up. And I remember in one of our early conversations in our previous Sprocket Pod episode, we had talked about what is community led growth. And I think that community led growth, in my opinion, I'm curious to hear the take from both of you, but in my opinion, it's really a matter of putting yourself out in front of a community in a way that adds value and in a way that is really not asking for things from the community. And that's, I think, what's allowed a lot of these people to be successful in our space.
Yeah, I mean, I think the authenticity and community are more important now than ever. I think with AI, there's so much inauthentic stuff that you could do at a huge scale. And so the authentic stuff becomes more valuable. And I think it'll continue to get more valuable. In terms of like community-led growth as what it means to me, I mean, I think about it as I guess because as a marketer, as a go-to-market motion, it's like you build a community. There's this old saying: if you go to a haircut long enough, or if you go to a barber shop enough times, you end up getting a haircut, something like that. Basically, you build a community where people are active, and that community is connected to a product or service. It's very likely that as people build a connection to the community, it becomes easier for them to consider whatever the product or service is. And then there's all sorts of intent and data that one could get from those conversations if you're so inclined. So I think that's kind of where the word came from. And I think it's going to be more and more important today because I can write a million pages of content marketing now with a single prompt, but to build a community is a hard thing.
I'm curious to hear, Chris, because I know that one of the values to Profoundly as a platform is the pros that are on there are vetted. And so one of the things that I'm sure you want to avoid is the race to the bottom, where now you just have a platform of whoever is going to do it cheapest. And certainly that doesn't necessarily always mean lower quality work, but we want to avoid that. What is the process for somebody who wants to join the Profoundly platform if they are an admin and they want to start working with companies through Profoundly?
Uh, Believe it or not, a lot of it has to do with like showing up, how you have shown up. So a lot of practical, I guess, social proof is a huge part of it. That's where we know not everybody is going to be at this level. I think there's an embarrassment of riches right now because of the people that we've started with, and they have expert networks. So we've had I've had over 150, applications for pros. Um, uh, so yeah, without getting into too much detail, it's uh, trying to. For me, the challenge is like, how do you standardize that? How do you scale it? But do you even need to scale it? Right? Like, if this is the value, if this is the standard that we're trying to provide, it's not a test. Like, that can be taken, and kind of the argument I'm making right now in a lot of cases, like certifications and accreditations, if it's not live and in person, it's so easy to pass those, with the help of perfect information, AI sitting right next to you. Um, and that's really like the last 6 months of Let's Build was really like that was the vetting process for a lot of the early pros. Like it's very hard to, and there was some of them, like a couple, not very often, but it's very hard to go live on LinkedIn and talk about a HubSpot topic if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So that level of confidence, like the ease of being able to talk about complex topics out loud, no matter the use case, being able to answer questions live on the spot, um, is a big part of it. Of course, background and, uh, the length of time in the ecosystem, like certainly helps. Um, but we're trying to create a space where even if you don't have that resume, like, and this is kind of like, inspired by by what we've seen in Sparketeer, like you mentioned, like if you can come in there, uh, and we got a profoundly Slack, like if you come in, um, and you start helping people solve problems, like in the Slack, like, uh, it's at least as important as a HubSpot Academy certification. I'll say that much. Because people are asking questions, you're showing up to understand the problem, you're providing a solution. Like that for me is where we're going in terms of like how do you actually know somebody is equipped to help you, right? Like have they done it before? Do you understand how they approach things? Like is it clear which industries or use cases they've worked with in the past? Um, Things like that are a big part of the vetting process for sure.
I don't know where to go on in terms of standardization because I think to a degree there maybe doesn't need to be one. I mean, if we think about profoundly at scale and you have many, many customers and many, 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 many pros that are needed, perhaps at some point a system has to be created. But I think that what you just said really speaks to the beauty of the ecosystem. And it was funny where I had made a post a couple of days back on LinkedIn, and one of the bullets was that the ecosystem is saturated. And you kindly pointed out that that may not necessarily be the whole truth. And I think that you're right in saying that there is a ton of growth opportunity. One of the really interesting, I think, things to consider with where the ecosystem is at for the HubSpot admin is when I had said it was saturated, what I had meant was you can't just go get a couple certifications and you're going to land a job at a top tiered agency because there are so many pros and experts that I mean people get traded around like baseball cards. Everyone wants the best talent, but not everybody wants to go to an agency, and profoundly really solves for the individual who really does know their stuff but isn't looking to be in the I don't want to say be in the partner space, but they just want to do their own thing. And I think that's a really amazing opportunity for the admin who knows their stuff. And on the flip side, when we think about companies like Meta or Google or any of the big ones, the way you get a job at those companies is by knowing somebody who can ostensibly get you in as a referral or whatever that situation may be. And I think that this is almost an extension of what we're seeing with those large companies where who you know matters, whether that's connecting with you or pros at Profoundly, and being known in the Profoundly ecosystem, being known in the Sprocketeer ecosystem, or the HubSpot ecosystem at large, being known matters. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent. So that's my
Yeah.
opinion, and I'll stand by it.
Yeah, I think that nailed it. And like so much so that Rob Jones and I do have been doing a show for a while. It was called Let's Build Community Content. Because I feel like I've uncovered something special in terms of like collaborating openly in the community with other people is the fast pass to becoming known for something you're good at and people finding you, right? So much so that as everybody talks about GTM engineering and GTM being broken and all this stuff, it's like, oh, surprise, all the B2B like lead gen tactics that arguably worked aren't working anymore because people want to deal with humans. They want to see you, hear you, uh, understand you, and believe you.
You're telling me I can't just build a clay table and my business is going to be going bonkers?
Not sustainably, at least. Uh, so what we discovered recently, it's like, okay, like the community is the go-to-market like model, like community in some way, shape, or form. So we changed the name of our show to Let's Build GTM, and we just continue to talk about community content uh, to see if that rings a bell. But that is like central to what's happening with Profoundly. And we're already seeing it in terms of more pros coming in that are already, qualified, and it makes for a less burdensome vetting process that can scale, in this very, slow is fast kind of way. Uh, but then it's easier for users, for customers to show up and understand who can help them, like before they have to sign up for a contract or a deal. And uh, I'm referring to it for us at least because I have the luxury of having a layer of experts uh, to refer to it like this, but expert led growth in terms of in reality, you know, they are great at sharing the message, on LinkedIn because they also want to help and they believe in the mission and the vision and what we're trying to accomplish here. So they're marketing. When somebody shows up that needs help, they're the ones helping, building proposals, selling, selling the help. If somebody picks them, they're delivering, right? So it's the whole layer, and it makes it a lot more straightforward, in my opinion, to support, to focus on supporting that and not necessarily, maybe getting distracted by some of the outbound tactics of the past where we need to find a way to reach out to this user base that, by the way, nobody has figured out how to reach non super users of HubSpot effectively, consistently, other than these community models, because they show up when they have a problem or when they just like the way you approach HubSpot. Um, and like, if you can embrace that, then it becomes like, how do you show up every day, like in that community? And that's your go-to-market model. And if you show up in the right way, bringing value first, opportunities, present themselves. And but I've said lots of times during the lead up to launch, like, I'm not sure this could happen in any other ecosystem.
Like
Right?
one where it could not happen, where it definitely couldn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
I've
HubSpot is
gotta
that special.
and I've got to give you full credit because I know you went all in, burned the boats on community led growth. And I know in the early days of Sprocketeer, when we would have conversations, there was a lot of we would have conversations around where you were trying to figure out like what does this look like? What could it mean? Is it possible? And to see from where we were having those conversations at the time to now, again, the boats have been burned profoundly as we're going all in, and to see it being received so well is a really exciting thing to see that growth. So huge congratulations on just going all in and making it happen, which I think it's a real testament to, again, not just yourself, but the type of things that are possible in this ecosystem where, shoot, I mean, you found untapped potential and here we are.
Yes. Thank you. And definitely like I'm a big believer in serendipity. Uh and that's like it can happen like if you create the space for it to happen. I think that's a large part of showing up every day. You don't have to figure it all out beforehand. But obviously, when we were talking about that, I barely knew who, you know, Jason Azakar and Brian Garvey were. And like just leading up to this, there's so many things that was like, and that's where I press because I want to go like 100 miles an hour, like constantly. And literally to start out from a platform perspective, which again, I think is the only way we have a chance at solving just this wide and deep problem. Because we've seen a lot of marketplaces, registries show up, and it's not just about being on a list, right? We can only show up in this way because there's so many pieces aligned in terms of networks and respect and time in the ecosystem and actual human to human conversations with all the people around us. Uh, so for me, like, and maybe this is a strategic secret, it shouldn't be one, but that's a moat. Like, it's going to be very hard to replicate that. Um, uh, Especially with all of the immeasurables like required to accept. Like if you're going to leap, like we can't figure everything out ahead of time. Can't forecast human relationships like very easily and trust. And um, so luckily we have a great team and again a great group of early experts that are willing to say, hey, we believe in this. We don't need to know all the dollars and cents you know, right now. Um, but we know we want to help people. We want to do it in a meaningful, sustainable way. A big part of this is like people show up on LinkedIn every day, but when the content is here today, gone tomorrow, like it's a grind, right? Like, and if you're not for sure that your content is hitting, it's hard for people to find it. I've had lots of people say like they do LinkedIn because they have to, right? They know it's not the best way, but there's no other way. And we believe this is another way. That's our goal profoundly.
I've been saying for a while now, if there are 9-year-olds on YouTube making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars doing unboxing videos and playing Roblox, I mean, if you want to be on LinkedIn, you can make yourself known on LinkedIn. There's a way to make it happen. The difficulty for a lot of people who are creating content in the space is, I imagine, because I face this myself, balancing everything. So if you do work for an agency or you are building your own business to any degree or capacity, then yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, which I mean, I think you're the king of content, Chris, with all of your Let's Build dailies, which day in, day out. I mean, it takes a heck of a lot of consistency, but the reward is there. Not just in terms of being known, but being able to monetize that in some way, whether that's career growth or some other fashion.
Yeah. And largely through all the relationships built. Like that was the hard part, the whole process. Like something's over here. We don't necessarily know what it's going to be or what it's called yet, but people are being impacted. People are building personal brands. People are getting education in a way that they never I've gotten before. And I think you make an interesting point, and it's one of the things I hope to achieve, or I hope to see achieved with what we're doing, is like the math of people available plus the speed of HubSpot. I started Let's Build because I saw Kyle Jepson showing up every day after giving me an opportunity on the admin hug, right? Like, okay, he's one guy. There's 800 updates a year. He does one per day. That's not enough, right? So can we get 10 more of him? Can we? And HubSpot said no. Uh, uh, but that's his only job, right? That's all he has to do is like he's brand evangelist. Like he shows up, he shares knowledge, right? Nobody else in the ecosystem has that luxury. And I never would have been able to get away with what I did if I had been inside of an organization that had like a bunch of client work to do and just all these other tasks. And that's why it's a challenge. And that's what I see now. It's like even the people who try to show up every day, it's so hard because it's like a third hat, right? You've got to be able to build out in HubSpot. You've got to be able to teach and coach people about HubSpot. And then like you're supposed to like correspond or create content about HubSpot. Like there's one that always gets left out, like when it has to, right? So can we create a space where, HubSpot creators like can be like a job, right? A worthwhile endeavor if you want to, have an income, because we need more of that. Like that's how you fill the knowledge gap, right? We need people sharing more. And I think we're on a path for that, but it definitely, you know, uh, takes a community like of people working together and knowing like, okay, you guys got that. We'll take, the news and updates and it'll all come out in the wash.
And to the point that you've mentioned, where it is difficult to say I mean, again, I work for Rev Partners, so a lot of my day is actually in HubSpot accounts, multiple of them, and doing all of the things that entails, which
Yeah.
I'm sure many of us are quite familiar with any number of things that could be. But you layer on community presence and the other aspects of content creation, and it does become a lot to juggle. But to your point, I think that for a lot of members of the HubSpot community, it's almost a found family type of vibe, if you will. One of the goals that I've always had at the back of my mind with Sprocketeer is when inbound rolls around, I want it to feel like we have a group of people that we're seeing friends, because I don't know about all of our listeners or the two of you, but I feel so awkward at um, conferences.
It might be the
Just
bright orange leotards that you have to wear.
Yeah, I mean, that is self-inflicted, by the way. Nobody asked me to do it, but
It makes it
despite
easier
the
sometimes. You
yeah,
don't have to
draws
break the
attention.
conversation
Yeah.
any other
Yeah,
way.
people want to chat. So I've always felt the very awkward, and so I do some of those more ostentatious things because I mean, why not? But um, if I don't have to go and try to find somebody that I can talk to in a corner, and instead, we have the group like what we do have in Sprocketeer now, and when we go, it's almost like we're meeting friends. That's a very different feeling from, oh, I'm going to go to sessions and maybe talk to somebody awkwardly while I grab one of the bagels. Like, no, that sucks. Nobody wants that.
What do you do? Where do you work?
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. I
Let's
I think
talk
actually
that's
had to
about
ask George
Helldivers.
for help at Inbound because and that was definitely like the last notch in the belt in terms of like, okay, this is working. Like let's build. Like it's so hard to look at LinkedIn data to prove that this stuff works. I wish LinkedIn Live like someday got better data, but in the meantime, we'll just trust because I showed up at inbound and people knew who I was. That, it was my second inbound. I haven't even been in the ecosystem directly for about a couple years. And I was like, George, man, what do I do? Like, people just come up to me like they know me, and I've never seen them before in my life. And it was like surreal, but also obviously, felt good because I'm also like, that's like one of the main reasons I have a big beard, because I don't have to start any conversation myself. Like, it's just like, if nothing else can be said, it's somebody is guaranteed to say something about the beard. Uh, so taking it to that level where people are like, "Oh man, I see you all over LinkedIn." It's like, okay, I guess something I'm doing something right then. But also knowing that, and this like strategically in terms of like creating content in the community and for the community and just focusing on value and not conversion and leads. Like, people need to be okay with that as the first step towards conversion. Cause I guarantee, because I started digging in, because what they weren't telling me is that they knew anything about any of my shows, right? They just saw me all over LinkedIn. Like, that's it. But that first step, I believe if you don't get that first step, it doesn't matter how good you are at targeting and messaging. And like, if anything, if you target me and I've never seen you before and your headline is so good, I'm wondering like, how the hell do you know that like about me? Like, uh, and I think it's a different game. Like, how do you break through that noise? You just have to show up more than most. Um, and then people can look at the headline and it'll mean a little bit more because you've made that first step of knowing, right? For know, like, trust. Um, so that was huge for me. Like, and it's very hard to quantitatively measure that, like, in the digital realm.
That's what we call top of mind awareness, folks. You have
Yes.
to make sure that when somebody sees you, whether that's you or your company or your product, they recognize and they know not just what it does or what you do, but what it stands for or what you stand for. And so, I mean, I know, Chris, if I think of you, I think not just familiarity with HubSpot, but consistency. Because the first layer, to your point, I've seen Let's Build pop up every day constantly, and I know, man, this guy is going to do it. And Mark, I know that this is your playground for building awareness for Deal Hub. What are your thoughts just when it comes to, okay, putting myself out there, getting in front of the community and building that top of mind awareness?
Man, sometimes it feels cringe, right? I mean, like, you kind of have to put yourself out there. I don't know about you guys. I hate listening to myself and watching myself, which is pretty tough because I'm on 2 podcasts now that do video a week. But you just kind of have to get over yourself. And there is certainly a direct correlation between engagement and awareness. And I can see it on the weeks when we talk about LinkedIn. Like, if I go a week without posting, I can see that my follower count, my engagement goes like way down. I think at least the platforms incentivize consistency, but the community, as a function of just people, incentivizes consistency as well, because if people see you consistently, that you will be rewarded with their trust or their awareness. So
Chris, I know that there are a ton of exciting things in the work, not just for you, but profoundly as a whole. We have the March 6th kickoff event. So, for those who are listening or watching, if this is before March 6th, make sure you register for March 6th, 2025, Profoundly Kickoff. We're going to be not just sharing a whole lot of information and educating people in the HubSpot ecosystem, but also celebrating the community. And so that's something that I want to touch on briefly, which is up until now, if you worked for an agency, maybe there's some kind of incentivization internally, but there really hasn't been a way for us to celebrate people outwardly. So, Chris, with as we wrap up, would love for you just to touch on community highlights and the type of recognition that is going out.
Yeah. So today is technically the last day. We're considering extending it though, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I'm always transparent. To nominate, a star in the ecosystem. Um, George is given a great, keynote and award ceremony at the end of the event on March 6th. And and there's some inspiration from, what Super's been doing at Inbound. And by the way, Sarah Lane Han, the admin of the year last year, is going to be on our what is an admin panel on this event. But it's like, yeah, who's been out there helping? Who's been out there bringing value? Who's been solving problems? Who's been showing up? We're looking for nominations right now, and we've got a bunch so far, some good ones. I'm sad, like I guess because I'm founding pro, I don't get to be nominated, so maybe I missed my window for awards like this. But no, happy to support and highlight those doing amazing things in the community. And you said it well. Like we're here to celebrate the individual experts, and it doesn't matter where you work either. Like we've got some elite agencies represented all the way down to the 9 to 5ers doing stuff on off hours, right? To help people with HubSpot. So it's going to be a good time, and we're excited to shine a light on more of those people.
So, the main takeaway from today's episode is that community led growth is really all about consistently putting yourself in front of your community, adding value, and just showing up day in, day out. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and not just talking about community led growth, but sharing more details about Profoundly. Really, really excited to see this marketplace grow and blossom as it becomes a resource for both companies and people who want to work with the more individual and direct HubSpot admin. And it becomes a place and a resource for the HubSpot admin who want to go and do more their own thing, maybe not necessarily through an agency. So, really excited to see all the amazing things that Profoundly does. And not just for the admin, but also in community celebration, content creation, and the many, many other wonderful things coming down the road. Chris, thank you for joining. Mark, always a pleasure when we do these.
Happy
Everyone
Valentine's
listening,
Day.
rocket on.
Happy Valentine's.
Thank you for tuning into the Sprocket Pod podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with your co-hosts, Cameron Collins and Mark Lerner. Be sure to catch us live every week on LinkedIn, and don't forget to subscribe to our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you found this episode valuable, please leave a review and share it with others looking to get more from HubSpot. Until next time, keep driving success with your CRM, and as always, Sprocket on.